Howdy everybody out there in keyboard land, Bad Mark with Mech Tech here, and today I'm just going to do a quick video on what's called Jailhouse Blues. Now I'm sure if you've been in the hobby for any amount of time, at some point or another you've probably purchased a board that came with switches you intended to immediately switch out, and maybe that option were blue clickies. Now myself, I am not a fan of clickies, but I do like some tactiles. But of course these just, they go in a bag and they end up sitting around. So if for some reason you're like, wow, I really wish I had a spare set of switches for this project or this or that, whatever the case may be, but you don't want clickies on there, this is what's called the Jailhouse method. Now, I've seen different versions of this, and I've actually tried a couple of different versions. One of the first ones I tried was actually, because just to kind of give a background, this is the stem of the blues that do not use a click bar, the cheap blues, usually the Otemu Red Dragon switches. So that bar, or that extra piece, is what clicks and makes the noise on the upstroke. It basically bounces back up, and it simulates a spring bar type of effect, or a click bar type of effect. So I had previously used super glue to try to keep both of these pieces together, which worked for a little bit, but not only was it difficult to get it because there's not enough real surface there, eventually it would come loose because it was under tension and pressure in there, and all the friction, it just eventually made those two pieces come loose. So what I did find that worked for me is actually taking this piece off, obviously try not to damage it while removing it. Sometimes it comes off pretty easy, sometimes it doesn't. I try to just wiggle one side out because it's basically just clips, as you can see, that hold it in place. Then I'll take one of your standard O-rings that you can use for keyboards, and I cut them in half. Once you cut it in half, what you're going to want to do is basically create creating kind of like a gasket, a bumper, if you will, for the click piece of the stem no longer to bounce and make that distinct click noise. So I'm basically putting it on one side of that insert and then the other side of that insert. And like I said, this is the cut half of an O-ring. So a cut O-ring. And you're going to want to do your best. You're going to want to do your best to make sure none of the O-ring is sticking out past the sides of the stem. You can pull on it a bit, it'll curl back around to itself. See, like right there, we're still good, because that little tiny bit, that won't matter. If it's sticking out anything more than that, obviously you want to cut it. But even with this, we can go ahead and just say snip off that little piece that's going past the side, or past the profile of the stem, basically. Try not to actually take a piece of the stem. So now, if you guys can see, the O-ring, I don't know why it doesn't want to focus. There we go. The O-ring is now basically acting as a barrier, a buffer, or a gasket, so that once we grab the other piece and put it back on, that's why we wanted to be careful and not to damage it. Now, as you can see, though it does move, it's not clicking. So once we go ahead and take the, this is my time budget lube method. This is super lube. I don't use Krytox. Krytox is meant for industrial and scientific applications, not for consumer applications. I use super lube, and super lube's meant for marine applications. So, but that's another video. And we go ahead and put the stem, the silent stem, or the O-ring stem, whatever you want to call it, but it's the modified stem. Take it and we put it into the housing. Got to get it into the spring. And we put in the housing, make sure it's nice and slid in there. and snap it shut. And now we have a Jailhouse blue linear. There's no bump to speak of, and compared to a stock, Jailhouse, stock, Jailhouse. So it's just a quick little trick. Like I said, if you're looking to do something with those blues and you've got some spare time on your hands, it's, I mean, doesn't take that much longer. I mean, if you got a couple of tweezers and you're going to be in there already to lube them, especially if you're doing my method of lubing, the time budget, then, I mean, got a decent, I mean, depending on what the spring size, the ones I found in here actually, I gotta say, I'm quite impressed. Actually, I'll just open this one back up because it looks like it's a nickel coated spring, and these are the Jixan, Jixan, the Jixan, which I'm not completely positive if they are a manufacturer or they get manufactured by one of the other companies. But the spring in here is actually what looks like a nickel coated spring. It's actually a decent spring. You know, it's not your normal silver cheapo spring. And once converted into a Jailhouse blue, actually performs quite well. I actually enjoy it and have used it on a couple of kits, and have actually, the first batch I did, I actually, a friend of mine preferred them over anything else because they almost have, they're not silent, but because of that O-ring in there, they do have a very soft strike and return. So it actually comes out to be a decent switch, especially if you're starting from good ones. And, you know, of course, you got the skinny pins, so you can use these in any of the Temu hot swaps. So anyway, that's the Jailhouse blue. That's an easy way to turn all your clickies into linears so that you can continue or use them just in case you need some extra switches and don't want to shell out the cash. As always, folks, keep calm and keyboard on.